As Diodorus of Sicily wrote, the Syracusan tyrant Dionysius, by the smile of fortune, was elevated above all other rulers, but he was afraid for his life and had to wear an iron shell under his clothes, and left after his death hatred of himself in the memory of the people for all future generations. However, now we know only about one episode in the life of Dionysius, and even then we do not associate it with him. Who was the master of the Sword of Damocles? Dionysius was born in Syracuse and came from an ignorant but respected family. As a young man, he chose a military career, which he began in the army of Hermocrates, the leader of an influential oligarchic group. As an exile in his native Syracuse during the war with the Carthaginians, Hermocrates gathered several thousand mercenaries with whom he raided the enemy, gaining popularity among the Sicilian Greeks. After the victory of the Carthaginians at the Battle of Himera, Hermocrates arrived at the battle site, collected the bodies of the dead Syracusans, and brought them to his hometown. He then tried to force his way back to Syracuse with the help of his supporters, but the citizens fought back and killed most of them, including Hermocrates himself. Young Dionysius, who was also among his companions, was severely wounded during this battle, but survived. 3 years after the victory at Himera, the Carthaginian army stormed the Greek city of Acragant. The news of its fall caused such fear among the Sicilian Greeks that many of them moved to Syracuse, while others sent their wives, children, and property to Italy. In a popular assembly, Dionysius, who was supported by influential friends, severely criticized the actions of the Syracusan strategists. Despite his youth, Dionysius proved himself a skillful orator, speculating on the patriotic sentiments of the demos and social antipathies of the grassroots, blackmailing them with threats of a Carthaginian invasion and oligarchic coup. He attracted the majority of the masses to his side, and with their support, he achieved his appointment as the only strategist with unlimited powers. Taking advantage of his power, Dionysius created a personal guard for himself, selecting over 1,000 adventurers, whom he armed himself and paid their salaries. He also brought mercenaries to his side, doubling their pay. In addition, he made changes in military positions, appointing men loyal to him to command positions. In Syracuse, he occupied the area of the Great Harbor, acting, in fact, already as a tyrant. The townspeople did not oppose this, as they feared reprisals from the guards Dionysius and saw in him the only defense against the Carthaginians. Wishing to be related to an influential family, Dionysius married the daughter of Hermocrates and married his sister to his brother-in-law Polixenes. He then called a popular assembly and put to death his most dangerous opponents, Daphnius and Demarchus. Dionysius thus became in a short time the tyrant of Syracuse, the largest of the Greek cities in Sicily. The Carthaginian general Himilcan withdrew his army from Acraganthus, which he had destroyed, and marched into the region of the city of Gela. Having taken possession of the Gela territories, he approached the city and began its siege. When Gela was on the verge of falling, Dionysius appeared at its walls with a large army consisting of Sicilians, Italian Greeks, and mercenaries. Dionysius developed a very complex plan of attack Carthaginians, but during the battle could not coordinate the actions of individual parts and was defeated. At night, after the battle, Dionysius ordered his army and citizens to leave Gela secretly. The morning there entered the Carthaginians and engaged in looting. Retreating Greeks no one pursued. This failure sharply weakened the position of Dionysius. Italiots returned to their homeland, the Galians showered Dionysius with reproaches, and Syracuse horsemen even plotted to kill the tyrant. However, seeing that his loyal mercenaries are not going to leave him, they moved to Syracuse, robbed the house of Dionysius, dishonored, and killed his wife. The tyrant hastily gathered a mobile detachment of his most loyal warriors, with which he stormed Syracuse and destroyed the rioters. Soon the Carthaginians approached Syracuse and laid siege to the city. However, suddenly an epidemic broke out in their camp, and this forced Himilcona to begin negotiations for peace. According to their results under the power of Punions, in addition to the former Phoenician colonies, traditionally belonged to Carthage, got the cities of Himera, Selinunt, Acragant, Gela, and Camarina, which had to pay him tribute. Messana, Leontines, and all the Siculian lands received autonomy. Syracuse remained independent and was to be ruled by Dionysius, in whom, paradoxically, The Carthaginians now saw the guarantor of the new order in Sicily. However, further events showed that they had miscalculated. This situation did not suit Dionysius, whose power was very fragile, and he hoped to strengthen it through foreign policy successes. However, before starting a new war against the Punians, he decided to prepare thoroughly. First, he fortified the island part of the city with a strong wall and towers, and also erected a large acropolis. Then he began to expand the territory under his control, for which he began to attack the autonomous cities, but was still wary of touching the Carthaginian zone. Soon he besieged the Siculian herbs, and only a rebellion of the Syracusans forced him to try to return to the city in order to retain his power. However, the rebels blocked the tyrant's way into the city and also sent ambassadors to Messenia and Regius to enlist their help against Dionysius. He became so desperate that he gathered his friends and told them that he was going to take his own life. One of them, named Gelarides, was ironic about the decision, telling Dionysius that tyranny is a beautiful shroud. Another, Dionysius's brother-in-law named Polixenes, advised him to ride to the region of the Carthaginians and Campanians, whom Himilcon had left to defend his conquests in Sicily, and ask for their help. A third friend of Dionysius, Philistus, said that you should not ride away from tyranny on horseback, but hold on to it until you are dragged by the leg. Dionysius heeded the words of his friends and decided to fight on. He attracted the Campanians to his side, and with their help managed to suppress the rebellion and regain power. The following year, Dionysius captured the Siculian city of Genna and the Chalcidian colony cities of Catana, Naxos, and Leontines. Despite the clear violation of the treaty, Carthage had not yet intervened in events. The main reason for this was the epidemic raging in and around the city, which the Punic army brought with it to North Africa. Continuing his preparations for war with Carthage, Dionysius decided to fortify Epipolus, the plateau that dominated Syracuse, by erecting a large wall there. Dionysius and his entourage personally monitored the progress of the work every day, visiting this or that site, and even organized a kind of competition, rewarding those teams who would finish their work first. The wall was built in 20 days. It was 30 stadia long, with tall towers along it, making it virtually impregnable. Dionysius spent the next few years recruiting troops and building a navy, making Syracuse look like a symbiosis between a military camp and an arsenal. A fleet of more than 300 warships was based in the city harbor. Fearing that living near the Strait regions and Messenians, who had strong immobilized armies, in case of conflict will move to the side of Carthage, Dionysius gave Messenians a large piece of territory near their borders. With the regions, he decided to breed with them and sent ambassadors with a request to marry a girl from their city and promises to expand their lands. However, the People's Assembly of Regia refused this proposal and replied to Dionysius that the only girl they would allow to marry him was the daughter of the city executioner. The Syracusan tyrant remembered these mocking words and later took cruel revenge for them. After the refusal of the regions, Dionysius sent ambassadors with the same proposal to the inhabitants of Epizephyrus Loca. Those were much more cooperative and married Dionysius Dorida, daughter of Xenetes, one of the most prominent citizens of Loca. A little later, Dionysius concluded another marriage with Syracusan Aristomache, daughter of his associate Hipparine. In honor of his double marriage, Dionysius arranged a series of lavish public feasts in Syracuse, after which he called an assembly of Syracusans and issued a call for war against the Carthaginians. He argued that they were the worst enemies of all Greeks in general, and of Sicily in particular. The support was full. After the assembly, the townspeople, encouraged by Dionysius, organized massacres and pogroms, seizing the property of the Phoenicians living in Syracuse and driving them out of their homes. The same happened in other Sicilian cities, whose inhabitants, according to Diodorus, openly expressed their hatred for the Phoenicians, for they not only seized their property as booty, but also laid hands on their persons, subjecting them to all kinds of physical torture and violence, recalling all that they themselves had endured during their captivity. Having thus secured the support of the citizens, Dionysius declared war on the Carthaginians, demanding that they relinquish power over the Sicilian cities. Exhausted by the epidemic, the Punians began to hastily gather a mercenary army. Dionysius, with Syracusans, mercenaries, and allies, came from Syracuse and besieged Motia, the main base of Punic in Sicily. A number of Sicilian cities from the Carthaginian zone defected to Dionysius's side. However, the Punic Panormus and Solus, the Elymian Egesta and Galicia, and the Campanian Entella were not going to submit to him and remained loyal to Carthage. Leaving his brother Leptinus, who had been an admiral, to continue to lead the blockade of Motia, Dionysius laid siege to Egesta and Entella. He could well afford to do so. While Carthage was trying to recruit a new army, the newly appointed commander Hamilcar conducted a series of sabotages against Dionysius's army, destroying his fleet in the harbour of Syracuse and even entering the harbour of Motia. However, due to lack of forces, he was soon forced to abandon it. Motia fell. Dionysius's warriors stormed the city and massacred it. Dionysius gave the city up for plunder and also ordered the crucifixion of Dimenes and other Greeks who had fought on the side of the Carthaginians and were taken prisoner. The few surviving townspeople he sold into slavery. The following year, the Carthaginian army was finally recruited and sailed from Africa to Sicily. Fearing the disclosure of military secrets, wise Hamilcar went to the cunning. He did not immediately announce the captains of ships the place of landing and gave them all sealed orders with the instruction to print after going to sea and follow the instructions. Eventually, the entire fleet arrived safely at Panorm, which was the destination in the sealed orders. Having landed in Sicily, Hamilcar immediately moved with the whole army to Motia, besieged and took it. Dionysius, who stood near Segesta, retreated to Syracuse, intending to give battle close to his native walls. As soon as he left the Punic zone of influence, all the cities there again recognized the power of the Carthaginians over them. Wanting a new base to replace the destroyed Motia, Hamilcar captured Messana, a city that had been an ally of Syracuse. Dionysius did not provide the Messenians with any assistance. Having destroyed the city's fortifications, Hamilcar moved on Syracuse. Meanwhile, Dionysius's brother Admiral Leptin attempted to give battle to the Carthaginian fleet under the command of Magon, but suffered a severe defeat. In Syracuse, Dionysius went to extreme measures. He freed slaves and manned 60 ships with them. He also sent an urgent appeal for help to the Italians, Lacedaemonians, and Corinthians, and began feverishly recruiting new mercenaries. But Syracuse was already alone in the face of a formidable foe, and it seemed that nothing could save the last Greek stronghold in Sicily. The army of Hamilcar, reinforced by the enrollment of a huge number of volunteers from the local population, took the city under siege. Instead of a decisive assault, however, Hamilcar began to ravage the surrounding countryside and build siege fortifications. While searching for material for them, the Carthaginians destroyed the temple of the goddesses Demeter and Cora and used stones from Syracusan tombs. Whether for this reason, or perhaps because Hamilcar's camp stood in an unhealthy location, an epidemic broke out in his army, which once again came to the aid of the Greek opponents of Carthage. Dionysius seized his chance and attacked the Punic camp, inflicting considerable damage. Hamilcar, seeing that there was no more chance of victory, entered into a secret conspiracy with Dionysius and agreed that he would allow him to leave Sicily only with Carthaginian citizens. In return, Dionysius received 300 talents in silver. Left without a commander, the Carthaginian army partly scattered and partly went into the service of Dionysius. Returning to Carthage, Hamilcar committed suicide by starving himself. His death marked the end of the Mahanid dynasty, which had ruled Carthage for a century and a half.